Tracy.
Hello, Andrea. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited to speak with you. I'm so excited to share your story. So we'll get started. I always start very simply with where were you born or where did you grow up? Because that's a good story for you.
I was born in Maryland. That's where my father was stationed at the time at Andrews Air Force Base.
Okay.
So I was born on an Air Force base. And I grew up in many different places as a military child, part of a military family. My father was an intelligence officer in the Air Force.
That's cool.
And my mother worked for the Department of Defense in their accounting department.
Really?
Yes. She's an accountant. And that was a nice job to have as a military wife.
I can imagine.
So when you're moving every few years. So when I was 3 years old, we moved to Seoul, South Korea.
That's where your mom's from.
That's where my mom is from. So there's a common assignment in the Air Force called a 1-year remote. And a lot of military officers or military members will do that assignment alone, away from their families, long distance for the year, which is, I can't imagine. Now that I'm a mother, shout out to the military wives out there. They really do so much for us. Because my mother, though, is from Korea, we all went along. And so we got to all move there together as a family. So I have memories of, I attended a little Korean preschool while we were there. Some of my earliest memories. But we were there for just 1 year, and then we were assigned to Okinawa, Japan.
Wow.
Yeah, and which is a beautiful, tiny little island in the Pacific, and very tropical. We were there for a few years. I want to say 3 years, and then it was just a really beautiful place to spend part of childhood. So that I was around kindergarten age, just starting school. And actually meeting some of my first sort of best friends and parting ways with, thinking that we were going to be parting ways with my first best friend. We got assigned to then Hurlburt Air Force Base in Florida, in the panhandle of Florida on the Gulf Coast.
Okay.
And it turned out that my best friend's family also got assigned to the same summer. So we actually got to move together. And I think
awesome.
That helped so much.
I can imagine.
Because otherwise it's so difficult being a child moving from school to school.
Mm-hmm.
We were there. That's when my father did an early retirement. So he served for 15 years total in the Air Force and then switched to government contract work. And so we were in Florida till I was middle school age, just about to start my freshman year of high school. And then he got a job in the Washington, D.C. suburb area for the Department of Defense. And we moved my freshman year of high school to the suburbs of D.C., to Northern Virginia. Starting my freshman year of high school in a new school. And so I like to I think it helped me to be a more adaptable person socially, honestly. That was sort of the gift in that whole experience. Spent the rest of my high school years in Northern Virginia and did my education, my undergraduate and medical education at University of Virginia. I think childhood really extends until we're in our late 20s in some respects.
That's sure.
When our frontal lobes finally sort of consolidate and we get our full executive function online. And when I graduated medical school, I had matched into an orthopedic surgery residency in Los Angeles. So moved across the country to Los Angeles, and that's actually when I feel like I really started to grow up in my what has led me to where I am today, which is working with psychedelic medicines. So I knew I wanted to go to the West Coast for my residency if I could, although I didn't have control over that at all through the match experiences, sort of leaving it up to the match gods, the algorithm. And but life took me to the West Coast, and on the West Coast, I of course crossed paths with spiritual community, medicine community. It's such a high concentration of people who are experimenting with psychedelics in Los Angeles compared to where I had previously spent my adult life in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Right.
And underwent the most transformational healing experiences, integrating the pain of the loss of my father, who passed away when I was 20, when I was in college.
Wow.
So, and yeah, just processing so much. But I'll stop there.
You can keep
Should
going.
I keep going?
Yeah, of course. I mean, processing the grief and loss of him, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. That
at that age.
Yes, I didn't really process really when I was 20. I was an undergraduate at UVA. I was pre-med. Because I had carried this dream since I was a child, really, of wanting to become a doctor. That was always it went back to, I pinpointed to about when I was 8 years old. I became pretty seriously ill with pneumonia and had to be hospitalized for about 2 weeks around Christmas time when I was in second grade. And at one point, the way my mom tells it is that my kidneys started failing, actually. Wow. So it was I must have been borderline septic now that I have sort of the knowledge, my medical knowledge. And I gather that I had an empyema, which is a pus filling up in the lung. So I was very ill, But again, like every challenging experience in life, there's beauty that is part of that experience as well. Although my mom does not carry any beauty. She says she aged 20 years.
I'm sure she did.
And now that I'm a mother, I can
only understand.
I like having your child in the hospital like that. I just pray that, I went through that experience actually myself with my son, but yeah, I get it now. But that's when I first got exposed to a hospital, and I loved science and really wanted to just help people. So I was like, okay, I love science. I want to help people. And then, of course, people start to, or I think when you say when you're little, and I joke when you're from an Asian family and you say you want to be a doctor, it's very supported and encouraged. But my mom never pushed me to do that. But she does tell me that was a dream of hers when she was growing up in South Korea, post-war South Korea. But it was such a patriarchal society, and her mother carried this belief that it wasn't worth educating your daughter. So
aren't we glad we don't live back then? Jesus. I'm not saying it's tremendously better, but still, it's a lot better. We have a lot more freedoms.
Better.
We have a lot more freedoms.
Gosh, yeah. Like I feel so blessed to have grown up in the time that we do, and to be supported. And never ever, when I was younger, never felt like anything wasn't a possibility for me, being, due to the fact that I was a girl or becoming a woman or something like that.
Do you think that was due to your parents' upbringing and how they modeled that for you, or how they encouraged you or created that space?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both my mother and my father
were empowering.
Very empowering. Very, I think one of the most powerful things they did for me as a child was I would overhear them talking to each other about me and saying the most uplifting things. She's so smart, or she's so beautiful, or, all of these things, wonderful. They say plenty. My mom says plenty of critical things about me as well. I love her. We have a special relationship, but very close now. Wasn't always that way, but yeah, I think that really helped so much, and also, positive reinforcement too, just with, with school and that sort of thing. And I always wanted to make my parents proud of me, so that meant, doing well in school and that sort of thing. And yeah, I think I try to model. That's something I do carry from the way that my parents raised me, that I try to do now with my son, and now my daughter too. My son now can overhear. He's a little over 3 now, so he can overhear what my husband and I say to each other, and I try to plant those little seeds as well.
Well, they've always been listening. I think that's the most underrated part of being a parent, is that from the time, at least from a female, from the time of conception, they are listening. I mean, we think that they're just hanging out in our body, but they hear every single conversation. And you studied the medicine, how much they are connected to all of the hormones and everything that the mother is experiencing, right?
Absolutely. On an energetic level.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I've heard it referred to as the mother-infant dyad, but I think it's the mother-child dyad. It never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Just that deep intuitive connection with your child is just, something I'm still very much in the learning of. I feel like I'm very much in that maiden to mother transition, and all of the mother archetype coming online for me. And it's just been incredible to experience. Feel very, very blessed.
You're so cute.
It's challenging as hell, too.
I know. I can imagine. And I never had to. I did want more, but that's another story. So, mine is turning 26 tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I know.
And it's your anniversary, too, of birthing her.
So, yeah, every time that happens, yeah, exactly. You definitely reminisce because it's been such a long time, right? But, yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
She's 26. I'm still learning how to be a better parent to her every year. I mean, isn't that the point? I think that's the point if you're doing it right.
Absolutely. It continues to evolve. I mean, my relationship with my mother, she lives with us now. We're practicing multi-generational living.
Wow.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Oh, we could talk about it.
Yeah. What is that like, Tracy?
I will not sugarcoat it. I will say that. But I think it has always been a dream of mine. And it's part of our path, our path for the intergenerational healing that's unfolding in our family.
I love that.
It's giving me, I'm going to become emotional. So I call it a practice, or sometimes I say it's an experiment, because it is in a way kind of radical in our current society.
It is.
To live or multi-generationally with, we have 3 generations in my home.
Especially here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Not so much in Korea.
No. Although I would say as society is modernized.
I know.
So it initially was a Western phenomenon, but now I
creeping
characterize
over there.
it as a modernity phenomenon. And so, there's we've now transactionalized so many relationships when we modernize, and sometimes it's easier to do that, especially if you have challenging family dynamics, which the majority of us have. That's the normal, is to have challenging. And I actually don't know a family who isn't quote unquote dysfunctional in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, and I think I heard some statistics where people, maybe they polled, it was a survey or something like that, that 85% of families identify with some level of dysfunction or unhealthy dynamics. So it's incredibly common. And so we shouldn't be afraid to talk about it and just acknowledge it. I was so ashamed of it when I was younger because my own family, the dynamics between us were not healthy, I would say. I can say that for sure. And a lot of that I now see with my perspective today, that was intergenerational trauma playing out. That's all it was. We all inherit these patterns and conditioning, and without being consciously aware of what is happening, that is what will play out. Because that's what we know. And also there's so many theories around it. But for me, at least, I just held in my heart that healing my relationship with my mother, that was where the medicines showed me where my work was.
The mother wound.
The mother wound, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It runs deep.
It does. And it's passed on generationally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I admire you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Because I aspired to do that. And I would say in my 30s, I finally went through a process of acceptance that my mother would never be the mother that I wanted her to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I watch other women go through this too. I've worked with women going through this. I think that was one of the most difficult things that I had to do, because I had expectations of us being in a relationship different than what it actually is. And I can't imagine having my mother in my home. I can't. I mean, as much as she is useful and helpful, and she's taught me some really beautiful lessons, and I'm so grateful for everything that she's done. I'm working with somebody who doesn't want to work. So it would be incredibly abusive to continue that in such close proximity. Yeah. So, I would love more than anything to have better relationships with every person in my family. Yes. I don't know that will happen between now and the time that everyone passes, but I'm open to the possibility. Let's hope that we resolve some of the conflicts, but we're very divided, all of us. So, and that's how we were raised. So I don't know how much, I know that one of my gifts of being born into the family was to help repair that for sure. But a lot of it is not completely in my hands.
No. Thank goodness, too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It would be a lot of work. That's all. I will leave it at that. It would be a lot of work. So I admire you for doing that. I think at some point, I also used to discuss this with my daughter about having my father live with us at some point, if that were ever to be a possibility based upon who, I guess, for lack of a better way of describing it, dies first, right? And we used to talk about that, but he was just here for 10 days in August. And I looked at my daughter maybe 2 days in and I said, ooh, that'd be really difficult. She's like, when is he going home? Right. So I think that, I mean, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that every family is dysfunctional. And I almost interrupted you and said my mom would be so thrilled to hear you say that. Because when I was a kid, she used to say, if you think this is bad, everybody else has it this bad too. She used to justify, right? So, we could talk about this for a while, but, I admire you for that aspiration. I admire you for what you're doing for your own daughter
Mm-hmm.
and for your son. Absolutely, 100%. But for your own daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that your daughter will also have the privilege of being in that close proximity. And I was single mom, so I did live with my parents initially with my daughter. And then even after I moved out of their home, she had a very close relationship. And it's something that is very, very special and important to her. She spent a lot of time with them because I didn't have a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very grateful for all of that. And she is too. But again, yeah, the dysfunction that runs so deeply in families, I don't know that we can all, I mean, I would love to say that we can all heal that. I think that humanity is raising in consciousness so that we can. Mm-hmm. But some dysfunction, some dysfunction is worse than others. I will say that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. In my own family, the dysfunction manifested as a few ways that I've come to start, and I'm still
unraveling.
Yes. But my father had an alcohol use disorder. We call it alcohol use disorder, however you want to label it. And I think sometimes when I hear even the term alcoholic, like that label, it flattens what is a multifaceted expression of whatever that is. And there's a whole spectrum, and it's so I always hesitated to ever talk about it because I felt like it was a disservice to my father, because he is such a beautiful person and was such a wonderful father to me. And I credit him with helping me to, I went to medical school and I became an orthopedic surgeon. And I was, I very much carry with me this idea that where there's a will, there's a way. And he was just so supportive of all of my dreams when I was growing up. And so I don't hesitate to still dream big and go after big, those big dreams. But it did erode the connection in his marriage to my mother. Mm-hmm. And I completely understand that. Mm-hmm. And, my mother does not drink alcohol at all. It doesn't, she doesn't process it well, being Korean anyway. It makes her feel totally sick.
My mom too. I mean, my mom's not Korean, but she says that she's allergic to it.
Yeah. And in many ways, it's sort of, I think we're learning more about alcohol as, it's really like its own spirit, and
every single alcohol is a spirit.
Yes.
It just depends on what it was made from.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. They're all really plants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, and again, I carry this sort of this belief that it's all about our intention and our relationship to anything that we take and put into our bodies.
For sure.
And so, from what I can tell, my father was numbing something.
Yeah.
Self-medicating.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't have that understanding as a child. And, it eroded the relationship between my parents. My mom was in full survival mode as a mother in a nuclear family and working full time, and trying to make ends meet and saving up, her daughter wants to become a doctor or saving for medical school. She was very much, she was so hyper focused on the finances in our family because her mother refused to pay for her higher education. And she's like, no, that's not going to happen to my daughter. I am going to provide for her what I did not get. Which is beautiful, really beautiful when you're able to get underneath how that actually manifested in our family.
Yeah.
And so it eroded their relationship, and they were moving through divorce actually when finally my brother and I were out of the house, and they stuck together. I mean, I do as chaotic and unstable it was really with how much they they just did not get along most of the time. Of course, there are moments of beauty as well, and there was a deep love between my parents, I know, underneath all of that, and they had always a deep love for us kids. They never neglected us or anything like that. We were always provided for, at least materially. I don't know about emotionally.
I love your honesty. And same.
Yeah, I mean, our parents are, everybody is doing the best they can with where they are at, with what they know. I really try to hold that good faith, a principle that everybody is really doing their best with where they're at. And sometimes we cope in maladaptive ways, and that's okay. And, we all have the opportunity to wake up to how that manifests and unfolds in our day-to-day reality. But yes, they were moving through a divorce. There was a lot of built-up resentment over the years, and it was, that's what they probably should have been doing, right? Is just to part ways at that time. The relationship had run its course.
Yeah.
And I, by that point, as a girl, a child that's out of the house, I was doing my own thing in college. I was so grateful to finally be away at school, and setting out on my own sort of life path at that point. And so I wasn't really connected with either of my parents too much when I was in my second year of college. My father sought out the help of his sister. And he I think he was looking for help. It was always difficult though in the military to get help for mental health. You could, and he carried a security, top secret security clearance. And I think he was worried about all of that.
I'm sure he was.
And I should have been as well as practicing in medicine, right? Seeking out whatever help I needed to help my mental health. Like I ended up, my mental health vastly improved with psychedelic medicines that are technically illegal still today, as we speak.
Yeah, I know.
Which is kind of wild to really think about. And so, and I just know, had my father been around today, or if these medicines were available for
he would have benefited.
He would have benefited. They would have helped him.
Yeah.
But they weren't at the time. This was, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
He sought out the help of his sister, who took him to a psychiatrist, who then prescribed an SSRI for him. So that's the model,
Yes,
that's the dominant paradigm that we live in still.
Yep.
It's still happening today as we speak. And that psychiatrist had no relationship with him, I don't think adequately assessed him to know that he was still probably using alcohol at the time.
Right.
And so alcohol and SSRIs do not mix.
No, they don't.
And there's actually a black box warning on all SSRIs that there can be a transient increase in risk of suicidality. And so he took his own life. when I was 20 years old. So I'm still processing. I still find myself getting emotional sharing the story. And I'm just now sharing the story because of how much deep, deep shame that I carried. Still do. I feel it in my body, even voicing it or sharing the story, because again of how much we carry in our culture around even the term suicide. I don't feel like is again so flattening for that, what happens there when someone just is in so much pain that they can't see a way out. And so it was incredibly destabilizing, that experience. As a child, I used to pray every night. I was raised Christian. So, and we went to church here and there, although we weren't a religious family at all. But I would pray every night to my conception as a child of who God was or what God is. And I had a total severing of that when my father passed away. I didn't believe in anything anymore. I'm like, how could this loving God that's supposed to be looking out for me, and I pray and I try to be a good person. I felt so deeply betrayed and forsaken. And I also was grappling with these ideas like, in Catholicism, I carried this idea, I think I heard that if you take your own life, then you're condemned to hell.
Right.
So I was like, is my father in hell? Like that's what I was grappling with when I was 20 years old.
And going through med school.
When I was pre-med. I was trying to get into medical school, which is an intensely competitive process. Yeah, you can't make any mistakes. And I made mistakes. I after that point, when I was 20, I actually ended up, I was at the University of Virginia and I was in a sorority. And the social scene there centers around alcohol. Mm-hmm. And in fact, everybody there has an alcohol use disorder.
Right.
We were drinking multiple, and it was just the common culture.
Yes. It's very accepted.
Accepted, celebrated, encouraged. Mm-hmm. The parents of the children come and drink with you when you're tailgating. It's what they did in college. And so
how do you get away from that? How do you create healthy boundaries around that?
I did not.
Right. I didn't. I don't have advice either. I can speak to the fact that I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Oh,
so
really?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it runs deep in my family.
Yeah. Oh, it runs deep in so many families. Mm-hmm. And I started to drink exactly the same thing that destroyed my father's life and relationships and everything. I ended up doing the same thing. So that is the intergenerational trauma. Yep. I was trying to numb from the pain, to the point of blacking out, and it was so, and somehow I'm still going to class. I mean, fortunately, when you're 20 years old, you can
rebound pretty quickly.
It's fortunately or unfortunately, if I tried to do that today, I don't drink alcohol at all today. I went out to a lovely dinner last night at a really nice restaurant in Portland, and I had a zero proof cocktail, and it was lovely. I didn't miss it at all.
Yeah,
I'm glad that the culture does seem to be shifting around that. But I drank to the point of ending up in the hospital actually one night, and it was like we had a date function, and and it was not uncommon for people to end up like that. That happened to my brother's roommate. It just happened all the time, and which is crazy now for me to really. Now that I have this distance and perspective, I'm almost 36 years old now. I'm like, wow, I was so lost. And didn't have any container for processing the grief.
Nope.
This happened in April of my second year of college, and my final exams were weeks away. And my father just taking his own life. So I was like, what do I do? I didn't even reach out for help to anyone. I mean, I remember emailing my professors and explaining that my father had passed away. And I asked for like some deferment for my final exams, just a little bit more time to, to grieve a little bit and get back to studying, because I could not focus on anything. And my organic chemistry lab professor said no. So I was like, okay, I just have to do this. So I took my exams. My grades for sure suffered in all of this. I somehow managed to still, pull off like the bare minimum that you can get. Because I was like, I saw myself sabotaging my dreams of going to medical school, and I couldn't help myself. And I was so deeply ashamed that I couldn't, and I knew also that I was reluctant to reach out for help with counseling or a psychiatrist, because I did not want to be medicated.
Well, there was a lot of stigma around that.
Yeah,
and a lot of fear, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I also knew of the side effects. I think I was really, really put off by that, worried about that. And I took a year off between undergrad and medical school, which helped a lot. And I went to Haiti actually for a few months. I was really interested in global health, public health, and had made some connections to a family that was doing grassroots nonprofit work down there. And that was a very healing experience in its own way. I nannied for a few months, got to take care of young children, which is also healing in its own way. I was out of that toxic culture of drinking all the time. And I like to say I just scratched and clawed my way into medical school somehow. Despite my GPA not being so good, I somehow got it together to take the MCAT, and I felt like I had a new lease on life, sort of getting into medical school. And the funniest thing happened in medical school. I just wanted to, there's a bit of a tangent, but maybe not. I distinctly remember being in class in medical school, and there was a case that they brought up. And the case was of one of the undergraduate students at UVA. We're at UVA Medical School, and they're like, oh, this is a case. One of the undergraduate students drank too much. And in the case, the patient's name, this hypothetical patient's name was Tracy. The way that my name is spelled, Tracy. And my entire body froze. I felt like I was being outed to my entire medical school class, what happened to me in undergrad.
I bet.
And yeah, that was just such a wild experience. And I don't know I don't remember the professor who put the case together, and if it was just a coincidence or what. But that also clued me into investigating more my relationship with alcohol, because I still wasn't completely, I hadn't really, I don't say I'm sober, or, I think my relationship with alcohol has evolved so much from that time, but it definitely helped me to reflect on that. And then I went through medical school, and I was really trying to find meaning again. I felt like, this is okay. I'm working towards my purpose, some sort of meaning of being of service to humanity, and also still trying to be deep in the learning of human suffering and what the human condition is, and what, in the seeking of what is all of this about? Why are we here? I don't know why. I still don't. I don't know. I don't know why. And
you still don't know why.
That's at the time.
Okay.
And being deep in that seeking, because I had no spirituality at that time, no spiritual life.
Yeah, you turned your back.
Yeah. It had forsaken me. I was like, okay, it's not that. I'm going to become like atheist. Scientist, like just hyper rational if I can.
I did the exact same thing in my 20s. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, that's not for me. That's bullshit, all of that. And yeah, I was like, that's just a salve for people who, I just judged it so much.
Right.
And also nobody around me had any sort of spiritual life either. Right. Well, it was rare, and certainly not any of my close friends. And so, I ended up pursuing orthopedic surgery for various reasons. I loved the ritual that was entering into the operating room. It felt like more instant gratification for helping somebody.
Because it was children?
At the time, I was in medical school studying everything. It's a general medical education. And then, you then apply to your chosen specialty to do your residency training in. And I knew going into medical school, I had always been drawn to the idea of surgery, had read all of Atul Gawande as a surgeon author. I'd read all of his books. I was very influenced by him. And also Paul Farmer, who there's a book Tracy Kidder wrote called Mountains Beyond Mountains. He was a physician who traveled down to Haiti to start his nonprofit Partners in Health, which is what inspired my trip to Haiti before medical school. And so I'm going in medical school, and I'm finally getting an insider's look into what the modern American healthcare system is about.
Yeah.
And my eyes are being opened and sort of washing away the idealist illusion of what it was, going to be like. And but I'm in metal, and I was sort of waking up to that in a awakening process. But I'm in medical school. It's not cheap.
Nope.
You've already invested the golden handcuffs.
You're already there. You're already there.
Solidly locked on.
Yeah. No turning back now.
Nope. I gotta see this out so that we can get some sort of return on investment.
Your mom's been saving your entire life. I was going to say her entire life, but not
my
really.
Mom sacrificed everything to
just
make
for
this
you to
dream
go.
possible.
I better do it.
I'm like, shit.
No pressure. No pressure at all.
And I definitely part of me for sure looked at it as a return on investment for my mother, which is really funny to think about now. So that meant, and then women were massively, still are, underrepresented in the surgical subspecialties. I see why now that I'm a mother.
Do you?
Honestly, yeah.
Why? From your perspective?
From my perspective, now that I have a 3-year-old and a 2-month-old, the demand, it is possible for sure. I mean, women do it all the time, every day, right? They exist.
But they abandon their family in the process.
there are sacrifices made that if that is your calling, you can make it work. The pain of being away from your very young children early, especially as early in their life, and in particular in the first 3 years of life, it has to be worth it for you to make that trade and to feel solid in your heart that this is, and trust that my children will understand. But that was not the way my relationship to my surgical job morphed, because it's a 10-year plus process of, you go to 4 years of medical school, and then there was 5 years of general orthopedic surgery training, and then 1 year of fellowship specialty training, specialty orthopedic training. I changed a lot in that process. I evolved as a person a lot. And it was no longer my true calling, my dharma, my soul's, purpose. It had changed. And then to be separated from my children, my very young children, for a calling that was no longer just well seated in my heart, no longer felt aligned for me. And so many women feel this. I think when I became a mother, it's a metamorphosis. Parts of me completely dissolved and died away. And incredible new parts of me came online and were birthed out in that process. It's a rebirth. And ego dissolution, your whole identity changes. It's, now we have a term for it, matrescence, which it's the same. It is as dramatic as adolescence is, really, if you allow, if we allow the space for that full transformation. And it no longer felt aligned for me to, I feel, at least personally, very deeply, strongly about the biological the biological role that only I can fill, being their biological mother, and how that plays a role in their neurobiological development of their nervous system. And so once I had a deeper understanding of all of that, I really came to a crossroads, sort of a choice point where, it's like, do I continue in this job where I have to take 24-hour emergency level 1 trauma center call every 4th night on average? And what that does, just the energy that takes. Or do I sort of re-envision what it means to be a doctor and practice medicine and what that can look like? And so, I thought before that the reason why women weren't, we didn't see more women in surgical subspecialties was because there was some sort of, it's a boys' club. There's discrimination. They don't really want us there. They tend to be the higher paying specialties. Like, it's very competitive because of that. And there's for sure some of that goes on where you feel like you feel unwelcome in. There are many times where I was the only woman in a room full of men. So I felt a little bit of what it feels like to be in the minority and feeling like your presence is changing the dynamic of the room in almost like a disproportionate way, because you are, or just being self-conscious about that, at least. Even that might not be going on, but that's what it felt like in my reality. They could perfectly not be paying attention to me, sure. But there were for sure, lots of comments along the way when I was in residency, and I was, fortunately in my class, there were three of us women in my residency class of 5 residents, but then we were the only women in the program, for the years. The few classes above us had no women, and there are no women in the classes under us. So I, moved through sort of what that was like, and for sure ran into verbal sort of sexual inappropriateness from some of my male attendings. And actually right now there's a whole legal lawsuit going on related to all of that stuff and leadership in my program. So for sure I ran into all of that. And there is it's all there. But at the end of the day, I think it is just very hard to make motherhood and a surgical career work. It can happen. You can do it, but there are sacrifices that need to be made.
Yeah, and you would sacrifice in both, right?
Uh-huh. Yes, for sure.
And men wouldn't.
Yes, a lot. There are all sorts of different setups and in families. And what I witnessed it was very, very rare for me to come across a female orthopedic surgeon who was also a mother. A lot of them are not mothers.
Right. And that makes it possible.
Yes. And then if they are mothers, that they were happy and fulfilled. A lot were burnt out and not happy, not thriving, sacrificed their own physical health.
Right.
A lot of my male colleagues sacrificed their physical health.
Right.
It's
a very demanding profession.
It's very demanding.
And it's also a very demanding workforce.
Yes. The system demands.
Just the 10 years alone that you sacrifice of your life to become trained at that level is a sacrifice.
It is. It really is. You are making below minimum wage for the hours that you work. I was working 80 hours a week my first year of residency and making $45,000, I think, in Los Angeles. Not very easy to, pay for an apartment and have a car and do all the things that you need for the job.
Nope.
And they'll charge you extra to have a parking space at your own hospital. And no benefits.
Right.
They totally take advantage of the fact that there are only a certain number of spots, and there are way more people that want those spots than there are spots available. So you take what we get or what you're given, and you have these golden handcuffs, and you're thinking also, like it's pretty brutal, the training process. And I trained in an old school what they call blue collar county hospital in South Central Los Angeles. It was pretty gritty, and the culture not healthy,
right?
Very toxic culture. And I still remember I'd be taking 24-hour call as a junior resident, the only orthopedic surgery resident in the hospital, as gunshot victims come in, as motor vehicle people mangled in high, freeway motor vehicle collisions, just going from patient to patient, and the cortisol. Just I don't want to think about the years I've taken off my life in that process, but thinking at the same, just being so drained, and also just coming to face with just all of the social ills of our society, and feeling like I was drowning, barely able to keep my head above water, and like I wasn't actually helping people. But at the same time, telling myself, it'd be 3 a.m. I'm taking the elevator up from the emergency room back to our work room for the 10th time that night. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I should be grateful to be here. So many people
Want where I am.
would love to trade places with me, would give anything to trade places with me, who had gone through medical school, had the dream of becoming an orthopedic surgeon, and they didn't match into the specialty. I got a spot. I should be so happy and
Because
fulfilled.
you're special.
Yeah. And I'm doing what I've always wanted to be doing.
Right.
And I feel like a shell of a person.
Because you're drained. You're completely of service. I mean, it's not even the same as being a teacher. It's not even the same as being a teacher, but the helping professions, right?
Absolutely happens in all of the helping professions, all of the first responders, teachers, any caregivers, elderly care, infant and toddler care. It happens a lot to a lot of people.
Taken advantage of, especially our youth.
Yes. And when you have passion for something, you're easily taken advantage of.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I became a teacher, so I get it. And how can you give or be of service if you have not had the modeling
Exactly.
to take care of yourself?
Oh,
if you come from a family who sacrifice, I had a mom similar to your mom. I'll just keep saying she's not Korean. However, there's some similarities there. And very driven, very driven for her children, very critical, and a perfectionist. And so... and maybe that stemmed from, I mean, it's definitely in our lineage, but it definitely stemmed from her mother, she was a vaudeville dancer. She's a dancer. And so, just being hypercritical of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and who you are in the world and how you present yourself and how you speak and how you handwrite and how you do everything is very criticized and perfected. So, while I didn't go to medical school and I did become a teacher, I look back as you're speaking, I look back on my own experience of it. And I think it was I had a mother who never took care of herself. Mm-hmm. She had 3 children. She gave everything to us and literally did not take care of herself. It's amazing that she didn't come up with some kind of illness or have something go wrong. I'm not saying that there weren't side effects to that sacrifice, but certainly nothing major. And how lucky we were because of that. But I think she did not teach me how to take care of myself. And in addition, we have similarity here probably. Both of your parents worked incredibly hard and were gone a lot. Mm-hmm. And so were mine. And so women in general learn all the self-care, the self-worth, the self-love. All of the selves come from their relationship with their father. Because it teaches us to be in relationship to the masculine, and it happens in our adolescence. And so my father was not around during my teenage years. I don't know about yours. And so by the time I got to be in my teens, I've got this modeling of a mother who gave everything to everyone and then was kind of a martyr because of it. And then I had a father who was not around and like working all the time. And so me taking care of myself was like, what?
That wasn't even the concept.
And so going into a profession where obviously, I still love helping people, but not knowing how to put myself first. I was ripe for being taken advantage of in so many ways, not just my profession, but also my marriage, which I am coming to the end of. So of a very long divorce process. But either way, as you talk, I just think there are so many, and I don't know that it's specific to women, but there are so many young people that we take advantage of in the workforce to do all of these professions that are paid below substandard wages of living, and that we are so drastically relying on to make all of these systems work. And I think in COVID, a lot of our youth were like, we're not doing this anymore. You guys are crazy. You Gen Xers are crazy. And I agree, we are. But that's how we were bred, to put up and shut up. But, I hope, I really hope that humanity is raising in consciousness. I mean, I believe that we are, but at a rate that hopefully in our lifetimes, hopefully by the time your daughter is out in the workforce, that we have really shifted this, that we have really changed this, or that we have made drastic changes to a very toxic system, multiple systems, all of the healthcare, all of that. Really, we really need to shift that. And I hope that the younger generations are powerful enough to do it.
If we don't get in the way too much.
Well, it's the generation right above me that is really kind of still holding on to some long-term choices that we've made here in the world. But I hope, I really hope, I talk about this with my daughter a lot, I really hope that what we've done can be undone.
It's an evolutionary process. I like to say let's try to evolve. It doesn't have to be a revolution where you burn everything down.
Yeah.
Because you inevitably end up building the same oppressive system over again without being conscious of it. So just allowing the evolutionary process to unfold is what Mother Nature shows us, who is my greatest teacher. So I always say, like, well, what happens with Mother Nature? What has she shown us over billions of years of this evolutionary process that has unfolded on our planet? Because if whatever we come up with, if it goes against what is a natural process, what wants to naturally unfold, then if it's over engineered with our human mind, our limited human mind, then it won't work. It won't work. And so, I for sure hold the dream for my daughter. I like to say once you have kids, you really have skin in the game for the next generation to make things better.
Do.
You really, you can't throw in the towel and be like, oh, Earth's gone.
They'll figure it out. We're all going to die anyway.
You can't be pessimistic anymore. You have to be relentlessly optimistic and relentlessly put in the work to try to make the world better leave the world better than you entered it. And yeah, for me, what that looks like with my daughter, I was able to manifest dreams that my mother couldn't have manifested. And so now what does it look like for my daughter? I'm still so grateful to have had the opportunity to become a surgeon in the American healthcare system, the greatest healthcare system in the world, right? So many countries at least look up to us.
Sure.
So I very much we don't
have different
want to
resources, for
right.
Sure.
I'm probably one of the most privileged women in the world, really. So many women grow up in other countries with this dream, and we still have other countries where, they don't even believe in educating their daughters.
Right. Yeah.
So I carry all of that awareness with me, and I still, if let's say my daughter wanted to become a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, what would I tell her?
What would you tell her?
And I would ask her, has she thought about becoming a mother too? And well, how does the system support mothers in that dream? Do they ask mothers to perform like fathers? because there is a biological reality that we must navigate. However much our consciousness likes to go exploring in the cosmos, we're bound to this planet, to
Yes,
our
we are.
biology. And not just bound, but it is integral to our experience of, our conscious experience is through the vessel of our bodies. It's a gift. It's not a curse to be a woman. It's not, that narrative does not ring true to me that, oh, I'm a woman born into a man's world. And if I'm going to succeed, then I must conform to a set of values that are fundamentally masculine and therefore go against my innate, my biology, my femininity. And so I would love to help usher forth a system that does allow a woman to become a surgical subspecialist. Because I love the work, the actual work. There's so much BS that you have to deal with too. I say that I really, really loved about 10 to 20% of my job when I was actually, helping reconstruct a tiny little foot that was born with a congenital anomaly. Like, that is incredible privilege. And I still love it. I still grieve that I'm not doing that anymore right now. Maybe I'll return to it again if I am allowed the opportunity by the orthopedic surgery community. But the way that the system is right now is, unless you're willing to take the same amount of call, no matter how old your children are,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're birthing, in the process of in your childbearing years of birthing children and breastfeeding them. I actually sacrificed a lot in my first breastfeeding journey with my son when I was still in training. And I didn't want to do that again with my daughter, whom I think, oh, she might be my last child. This might be my last opportunity to. It's such a beautiful, special relationship when we give it the space. It needs tremendous space to unfold the way that Mother Nature intended. But our society, so much of our modern society gets in the way of that relationship, which is why the majority of mother-infant dyads aren't able to move through that journey fully.
Mm-hmm.
Which is okay too. I did it with my, I ran into those challenges with my son, and I made that trade-off. But yeah, I think like, I would hope that if she wants to become a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, that, she's allowed space to cycle with her hormones when she is moving into her trying to become fertile and not have to sacrifice her fertility like so many women do. There was actually when I moved through some time where I was, the term now I think is subfertile, but I was coming off of birth control. I had been on hormonal birth, which that's its own. We could probably do a whole podcast on that. There's fortunately many podcasts now. There's many podcasts now talking about this, which is wonderful. I think it's such a service to young women.
I agree.
Every young woman, don't listen to what your doctor tells you. Go out, educate, become educated on all of this, because there's not enough time for fully informed consent when you're in a 20-minute visit with your doctor.
Yep.
So, and it was,
my body went to sleep.
Yes, you put your body to sleep, and then you have no trust in your body's innate wisdom anymore, because you've severed that connection by you basically chemically castrate yourself.
Yep, you do. And then I had an IUD, and it took me 3 years. I think it took me 3 years to menstruate. And that was with regular acupuncture and a number of herbs and so much work around it. And yeah, I mean, that time, that I didn't expect. You know, some people are like, oh, I pulled my IUD out and I get pregnant the next month, right? But, you know, depending on the timing, depending on your body, depending on how long you've been on birth control, all of that, yes, we could talk forever. But that was a tremendous disservice to me in addition to also not having a lot of awareness around my partner's ability to be fertile, right? It goes both ways. And as we continue to get older, that continues to shift, right? So it definitely changed my perspective on creating the family that I had wanted, for sure. But enough about that. Okay, so let's get back to you. I have a question for you that I've been wanting to ask. How does your mom feel about what you accomplished and now the work that you're doing? Because it's shifted tremendously.
It has.
And it wasn't her vision.
No. Her vision was for me to become a plastic surgeon.
Oh, wow.
Which, by the way, like
in LA would have been very useful.
It would have been very lucrative. Seoul, South Korea is the plastic surgery capital of East Asia, at least. I have many thoughts on plastic surgery. It was not my calling. So,
what are your thoughts on plastic surgery?
Gosh. You know, I think it can be useful for some people, for sure. If you are so fixated on some aspect of yourself that you can't, and again, it's where you are in your own journey. I would recommend, this sounds like a self-promoting thing, but because I work with psilocybin now, but I would recommend a journey first. And then if you still want to do it, by all means, and you have the means, you're not sacrificing your other needs to pay for it and that sort of thing. But you know, I think it is very helpful for some people to get over the fixation and move on with your life.
Right.
Especially in such we're such a visually, you know, fixated world now, probably more than ever.
Yes.
Like I actually think
especially
about
with
it.
Social media.
Exactly. And I think that will evolve now. It's really interesting what's happening with artificial intelligence and all of these artificial images that we're being flooded with. And I'm really curious and actually optimistic about how our conceptions of beauty will evolve. Because right now it feels like there's a very narrow conception of what a beautiful face or a beautiful body is, but that will hopefully evolve so that, you know, if you were, you know, born with a certain like facial feature from your lineage, then maybe rather than trying to conform to an idea of what beauty is at this point in time in your current culture, and it varies from culture to culture and from, you know, and what era we're living in, that maybe what we are born with, maybe it's worth keeping. I don't know. It's everybody's own personal journey to move through. I just knew that I probably would not have felt fulfilled doing it myself for a living. And yeah, for sure, I think there's sometimes it can, be misused. We see it misused I think of it as a technology like anything else, but it can be misused, and, you know, it will sometimes, you think you're trying to satisfy something, like it'll make something all better, and it doesn't actually. That there's something deeper going on, full acceptance of oneself.
There usually is something deeper going on. Yeah. For sure. Something that you haven't accepted about yourself.
Yeah. And we have ideas of how we might be accepted after having it. But at the end of the day, I mean, we know this after working with these medicines, like you can never be accepted by somebody else without fully accepting yourself. That's the project. That's the task at hand. And so my mom, to get back to your question, I took a while to tell my mom about it. Mm-hmm. So now I've shifted to practicing integrative medicine and working with psilocybin under Oregon's, we call it, legally speaking, it's the adult use model. So I'm a psilocybin facilitator. So I facilitate psilocybin journeys, and then working on more of a coaching model with people. So shifting away from what my relationship to the person that I'm sitting across from who is coming to work with me. Like I have been trained as a modern allopathic physician, a surgeon, and it was very much a hierarchical relationship where someone's coming to me and I'm supposed to give my expertise about how to fix something, and shifting that to more of a relationship of reciprocity with the other person. I don't even, to call the other person like a patient or a client. I feel like, it would be with a client, sort of like a client model, but bringing the medicine, integrating it into our system, that's what really drives me these days, figuring that out. What does that look like? And especially because the medicine, we haven't really even talked about how that psilocybin played a role in my own healing, but it has, it saved, I believe it did save my life. And for sure, I would not be where I am today without that medicine. And so bringing it to others in a responsible and respectful and loving and beautiful way, that's my mission. And when I finally worked up the courage to tell my mom, she was totally accepting of it. And that surprised me.
I bet it did.
Yes. And the key was speaking from my heart. And she was like, okay, she actually was like, you know what? I trust you. You've demonstrated that you're able to, that you're responsible and can focus and achieve things, and that you set your mind to. And if you really believe in this, then I support you and I'm here to support you. And that's why she moved in with us when I asked her to, because I knew that if I were going to be dedicating the energy that I really want to dedicate to this, that it felt most right for me to have my mother supporting me and raising my children while I do it, if that makes sense. Like I knew, and also my mother is also one of my greatest teachers. She is a reflection for me on exactly this ways that I have yet to evolve. She reflects all of my deepest wounds. Not intentionally, not in a hurtful, it's just in our mother-daughter dynamic. What gets revealed, what gets triggered in me are childhood wounds that run deep, that I wouldn't be able to see if it weren't for her. And so I actually worked with a coach who helped me to see this when I was in Los Angeles, and she works with psilocybin. And she's the one that helped me heal my mother wound. Because at the time I was estranged from my mom when I started working with her. I'm in residency in Los Angeles. She's back in DC. We would go, after my father passed away. I essentially didn't speak to her. And actually we weren't speaking when we would come together. I would try to heal things. you talked about fully accepting your mother, and I wasn't. I realized I was trying to make her into the mother that I wanted her to be. And because you can never change another person, you can only change yourself.
Yeah, that's been a process for me. It's been a huge process. I mean, I'm much older than you. I think I started at about your age, maybe 34.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I think I'll be working on it until she passes,
Mm-hmm.
and past that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is unresolved, I'm sure I'll be working on for the rest of my life. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
it is a practice,
It's a practice.
and it's having awareness. I agree on your childhood wounds for sure, and she can bring them up like nobody's business, but also having better boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I came from a family that didn't believe in boundaries.
Yep.
So I've had to change myself so that I can have the relationship that I do with her now. That is more healthy for me and probably is more healthy for both of us, but is not taken necessarily that way, right? So that has been a big shift, I think, for anyone who's listening. That process or that journey of one, going through an acceptance of the fact that you can't change someone else, and two, really grieving that you had expectations for a relationship that may not live up to those expectations. And it's not like a partnership or, you know, a romantic relationship where that can end. You are with this person. They are a part of your family unit, and you can't just disown your mother, right? And so you know, you are going to have to at some point come to terms in one way or another. I've seen people, you know, shut some of their parents out, right? Whatever is healthiest for them. Of course, certainly with certain abuse, that may be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
However, at some point, you're going to have to come to terms with your relationship with them. And you can continue to perpetuate that out into the future for as long as you want.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, you'll be faced, I feel like, you know, as a soul's journey, you'll be faced with coming to terms with that relationship and what that relationship means to you, and how you can come to terms in this lifetime, right? And I, you know, back to the spirituality, because eventually we found ourselves back there, both of us, right? After turning our backs on it, it sounds like psilocybin maybe had been very useful in that for you. I know it was for me, but coming to terms with the fact that we chose our family unit. And we chose our parents, and we chose our siblings, and that we have lessons with them. And certainly we have free will. And certainly we don't have to learn them. But because we're not in control of the other person, and maybe they don't want to learn them with us. But yeah, I think that has been and continues to be one of the hardest things that I've ever had to work with is my relationship with my family, in addition specifically to my mother. And so, yeah, I'll bring it back to the fact that your mom is so supportive, and you know, inspire me. I'll use that word again to relook at that. You inspire me or encourage me to potentially look at psilocybin as a healer for that. I can't say that I've ever intentionally done that specifically to my mother, so that's interesting that you're bringing that up.
I don't think I even carried this. Fascinating with the medicine is that I don't even think I carried that intention. It wasn't my intention when sitting with the medicine with that woman. Actually, it was two. The ceremony was facilitated with two women. I think there's something very special when it's women holding the container. And I was with another. She's become she's a soul sister. They're all soul sisters to me now, but who is working. So it was two of us, and then the two facilitating for us. And it wasn't even my intention, but that's what came up in the journey, which I knew I could trust, because that's what was shown, revealed, that's where my work was. And it continues to be where the work is, because I love the quote from Ram Dass. I think it's Ram Dass. We'll have to check me on that. But he says, if you think you're enlightened, go home, spend time with your family.
That's Ram Dass.
And I came across that quote during my integration work, and I was like, oh shit, that's so, because here I am, I'm in LA. I fully donned my spiritual ego, at least, where I'm meditating, I'm doing all these practices, I'm undergoing all of this growth, and then I would then feel called to reconnect with my mother again, and then she would trigger me, and I would fully express the pain of the wound in an unconscious way, really, because when I'm fully conscious of that triggering point, that trigger point that happens in that interaction, I don't respond in the same way. And when I don't respond in the same way, I shift the way I respond, totally changes the way she shifts and responds to my new energy.
Yep.
Like, I had to fully own my participation in perpetuating our dynamic, and not be anymore in the wounded child victimhood mentality, which I fully honor the child that's in me that was hurt in all of that. And I fully accept my sovereignty as an almost 36-year-old woman now, who is a mother to her own children, to not fall into that dynamic with my mother anymore. Ooh, it is so hard.
That was so beautiful, though.
I am in the practice. I am not perfect. My husband will tell you all the ways that he witnesses us. I had to give a shout out to my husband, who is a beautiful, beautiful man. Holds down the divine masculine in that whole process. Would not be able to do. I know he's my soulmate because of the way he has helped me to catalyze all of this healing with my mother. And I'll sometimes be sobbing to him, being like, did you make a mistake in marrying me? Did you know you were marrying into this family? Like, I feel so broken. I feel like I come from a broken family. You don't deserve, to see my mom and I just work through this process together, which doesn't look pretty. It's not this love and light, and it's doing deep, deep shadow work that is, I think, ancient.
Mm-hmm.
And he holds that container for us. And oh my gosh, the healing that has been catalyzed between my mother and me, I never thought would be possible in this lifetime. And it brings me so much joy. And that's what really fuels me day to day with doing this work. Because if I can share any ounce of learning that I'm doing along this way, because I'm deep in the learning. I'm a student. We're all students for each other. We're all teachers for each other. And just share what our experience is like, and maybe help coach somebody else who, wants to look at their mother wound. Maybe wants to shift the dynamic of their relationship, but feels stuck. Or because I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to get stuck and then fall into the pattern, and become so painful that we have to set the boundary, and but I'm craving this closeness and this intimacy, because they're our mother. They birthed us into this world.
They sure did.
They carried us in their womb.
They sure did.
And I actually had another journey. It was actually with 5-MeO-DMT. facilitated by a dear brother of mine. He's become like a brother to me. And I became my mother birthing me. And this was before I had children, before I even knew what birth was like, but had a full body somatic experience of birthing myself, but as my mother.
Wow.
And that was incredibly healing because it humbled me so much to what my mother has done for me without doing any of the other work of raising a child, just birthing me onto this plane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she doesn't have to do anything else. Thank you, Mother, for this life. And when I finally really sink into the deep, deep empathy of what my mother has done for in our line, in our lineage, because she has healed so much, even though she's so fully human. We joke we should have a reality TV show. I really do think it would do well because of I don't know if you're familiar with Korean dramas, but they are based on reality between mothers and daughters. And yeah, I when I really sink deeply into that, and I actually had a dream the other day. It's so amazing the healing that gets unlocked in our dreams when you work with psychedelic medicines too, when you just really swim in the subconscious, the unconscious. And my dream, it was as if my life had unfolded in a very similar path to hers. And, my mother became a mother when she was only 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She was so young.
Mm-hmm.
And her marriage didn't work out to with that person. So she found herself in a new country with a child, divorced, barely speaking the language. And then she met my father, had 2 more children, and again felt like, this partnership's not working out either. But I was living that out in my dream. And the desperation I felt, and the feeling of feeling trapped as a young mother with 3 children, and just trying to figure out what, some path forward. And in that dream, I woke up and I saw my mother there. I'm still in the dream, so it was like a dream within a dream. And I saw my mother, and we had just this deep heart to heart where I said to her, I see you. I see you. And she said, thank you for seeing me. And I woke up again to this life, here, and this reality. And it really helped me to then, I told my mother about the dream actually, and she goes, yeah, it was really hard. Oh no, she goes, well, sounds like a nightmare. And I laughed, and she, one beautiful thing about my mother, at least, is she's always looking forward, like to just, let's move on. Let's just try to make things better. We don't always have to dig so deep in the pain, wallow in the pain. Like, let's just try to make beauty now, moving forward. And so, yeah, she'll make little comments about like mushrooms being drugs, or, like, oh, you're going to like, I don't know. I don't think people will ask me like, so do you think your mom will ever do mushrooms with you? And I don't know the answer to that question. But I at least I can say that a relationship can massively transform with just you doing the work.
For sure. That's the only way.
That's the only way. And
That's the only way.
I could.
You can't bypass that shit.
No. And like my mom will show me, she'll be like, oh, if your mushrooms are so great and you're so enlightened, then why do you talk to me that way? And I'm like, shit, she's so right. She's so right. But at the same time, she has acknowledged and honored how much growth I have done. And I have arguably the best relationship with her that of the three children. And so she sees that. And so, she's like, oh, there's something here. There's something to this.
Yeah,
and
she can't argue that part.
No. And the fact that it comes straight from the earth, she has that deep, I think we all carry this sort of deep knowing and trust.
And respect
to the earth. And like, oh, that makes sense. Like maybe our medicines are given to us from the earth. And there's something so beautiful about how unadulterated that is with the mushroom as a medicine, that you don't need to synthesize anything. You don't need to do anything to the mushroom. It just grows and dries, and what a beautiful medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Ayahuasca has been a beautiful medicine for me too. I just want to honor, grandmother ayahuasca, which again, for the mother wound, beautiful medicine. And really grateful to the carriers of that medicine. And so, that was actually the first, psychedelic, if you will, the medicine that I sat with intentionally, ceremonially. So I really believe in the power of the ceremonial use of these medicines, in creating that ceremonial container, carrying and holding it.
And intention.
Yes. Preparation, intention, and integration. That is crucial. And in deep, holding a deep reverence and respect for the medicines. And for sure, these medicines can be used for play and unlocking, joy and wonder and all of that. So there's, that's all still there, but carrying the every time I sit with psychedelic medicine, it's with that container, with that structure. It's vital.
I agree. It completely transforms the experience.
Yes. And I it's really interesting now because there's, as these medicines are becoming mainstream, moving into the mainstream culture, there's now articles written it seems like every other week, about them in our largest publications, New York Times and all of them. There's anytime I have at least come across a story where there has been some sort of adverse events after a psychedelic journey. Inevitably, when you dig into the story, some element is of what we just talked about with preparation, intention setting in a safe container, and integration that will be missing. I've yet to come across where that is not the case. I'd be very interested to learn if there is a case like that, because I think it's very important for us to understand that as these medicines become more widely available.
Agreed. And to respect the generations that have come before us that have been using these medicines in the ways that they have, right? That as they become more modernized, that we respect where they came from.
Yes, the wisdom carriers who carried the wisdom through, all of the different eras where they were actively, suppressed.
Yeah.
And kept away from people. Maybe for good reason, because humanity wasn't ready at that time.
Potentially. Yeah. But anything that you create a war on, right? The war on drugs, or even, when we banned alcohol, that anything that you try to pull away becomes even more of a pull or a draw for people to then potentially misuse it because they're not educated on the repercussions of not using it with the greatest intentions.
Absolutely. I feel like I ran into some of that in my explorations. So, and I'm really grateful that I was in relationship with my now husband and with, the friends that I had who were able to help me integrate some of those challenging experiences. And that's another thing that I try to put out there too, is how important it is to be in community regularly with others who are on this path. Not everybody's on this path of the path of working with these medicines. And I don't think everybody's meant to. But if you are, how vital it is to make sure that that is in place, even if it is just one other person. So that therefore, the integration coaches, they're doing vital work in this whole ecosystem that is blossoming. And so, and then there's so many resources too, with starting now in certain places. For sure, here in Portland, there are meetups and all these groups, and the culture's changing.
Yeah, for sure. How do we end this? So I asked you one question, by the way. You answered a lot of things. It's very interesting intention, right? You answered a lot of the things that I had written down, intentionally, unintentionally. I'll end with, how do you feel we can incorporate more love into our lives?
Ooh. I believe, again, if we carry that intention of choosing love, that it becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that is some call it a frequency, the energy, the vibration, the energy that you're tuning. We can tune our entire body and our surrounding field to. But it takes conscious intention every day, which is when I start to say that some sort of regular practice is again, I say vital, integral, is especially in our modern day matrix. I think that has the power to change everything, because one thing psychedelics do is open you up to the full spectrum of the human experience, the light and the dark, the ecstatic bliss and every gnarly vision that you can imagine. You can potentially experience on a psychedelic journey. So you can come out of that experience. I think it's very important that people are prepared for that kind of experience, because you completely relinquish conscious control to the medicine and the experience, which is why it's so important to be held in a safe container with somebody that you deeply trust. And at least I and so many of us have come away from those experiences being like, okay, wow, I now what? I choose love. Of all of that is alive in me, in this, my psyche, my soul that's embodied in this vessel. And now what? There's something about love as a frequency and energy that has evolved on this planet, that hasn't evolved on any other planet, at least in our surrounding little corner of the universe, that feels like the chief sort of project of mankind, or really not just mankind, but all sentient life on this planet. That we are the children of Mother Earth. Why are we here? We don't know why. let's just choose love and see where it goes. Because we can't, at least when I see that played out on the micro level in my own day-to-day reality in my life, it's a completely different experience of life and reality and anything that unfolds in the next moment. That's my answer for now. I'm sure it'll change.
It was a powerful answer. I believe that we're here because it's the school of life. And we come here because our souls want to evolve. And it is the easiest way for us to evolve is to have all of these life lessons, regardless of whether or not we take them on.
Absolutely. Life is a curriculum for our soul's evolution. Absolutely. I hold that belief. That it wasn't until our beliefs are so powerful. They dictate everything. And so by choosing that belief, could I prove it to you through some scientific method? No, that's not.
No.
That's what the old rationalist, atheist, materialist me would have asked you for and dismissed. But no, I fully believe that, and that's why every soul that we cross paths with has the ability to teach you.
They're just mirrors.
Yes, absolutely.
Like you said, your mom. We are just mirrors of each other, basically.
Absolutely, yeah, and. Yeah, it's trippy when you really come to know that, to really understand that and put it into practice too. Life completely transforms into this, so many cliches end up resonating in a different way. Life is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh wow, yes. Or, we are all one. It sounds so cliche, but it is true. We're all so deeply interconnected in that way.
Yeah, mushrooms definitely teach us that, right?
Yes, they're the mycelial web of this planet. So for healing isolation, feelings of atomization, they're beautiful medicine for that, and really help to catalyze relational healing. And I do believe too that healing happens in relationship, in community. It doesn't happen isolated.
No, because how can you, like you said, your mom reflects to you the things that you still have to work through. And even romantic partnership, same thing. There's nothing wrong for anyone to want to go through this life solo, but I feel like the greatest healing is in relationship to somebody else, because they absolutely reflect to you where there's still work to be done.
Children too.
Oh, children too.
Like you said, it just continues. That's another thing that I've come to appreciate, is how every relationship evolves if we give it the space to. And ridding myself of these limiting beliefs about my relationships
or what can possibly happen.
That's been a huge part of the work, for sure. Not even just waking up to beliefs I wasn't even consciously aware that I was carrying, and undoing a lot of that conditioning, and then shifting from being victim to all of that to being a conscious co-creator of my reality.
Yeah, that's the good stuff right there. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. I feel like we could have had 4 more podcasts. There were so many different directions that I could have taken this, and I was just like, let her talk.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Felt like, I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a cognitive scientist, philosopher, John Vervaeke is his name. He's sort of at the intersection of Buddhism, cognitive science, and philosophy. And he talks about this concept of dialogos, where you're just yeah, just letting the conversation just flow where it naturally wants to go and what someone elicits in you, and then you run with it, and it felt very much like that.
Yeah, I would agree.